Well, hello and welcome to Mystic Brew. I am Radagast, and this is kind of my little. This is like kind of a Halloween, but since it's now officially November 1st, which is actually the whole package, and I wanted to take this time out to talk about a holiday or, a sacred day like Halloween, which originally is shortened for Hallowed Evening. Okay, so that's where we get Halloween. Hallowed means wholesome or sacred. More hallowed. Again, I like the word holy has its problems. You can see it in the spelling, and spelling is a big part of how we unpack a lot of stuff, but that's not what this show is about. And I think I should move my mic underneath my lips because you'll probably be able to hear me better that way. So, Halloween or Samhain is one of the things that at least it's called, and I think it's the Celtic word for it. So it's part of 8 celebrations in the old traditions. By old traditions, I mean at least in the Western world, that would be the Abrahamic religions. And eight is certainly an important number. It's the number of infinity. Interestingly enough, at least in the Celtic system, this would have been the first day of the new year. All right, so we just closed out in an Earth tradition, and at least in the Northern European Earth tradition, this was yesterday was the end of the year. Today is the first day of the new year. And when you consider the climate, we've already had a few frosts here, and I'm in Virginia. So usually this represents the last of the harvest season. The harvest season begins anywhere from late summer and usually is marked by the equinox. And then this is 6 weeks later, this is the close. Basically, the eight observances of the old traditions happened every 6 weeks. There's the 4 main markers, which are the equinoxes and the solstices. And then there are the ones that are placed in between. So this one, right, the Samhain is placed between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. And then after the winter solstice, around Groundhog Day, also known, I like Candlemas, because candle as a sign of light, mas, more light, and we're already, the solstice is the shortest day of the year. So 6 weeks later, we are definitely aware that it is lighter out at night. We have more day. So so that observance is also called, I guess, Imbolc, at least is how it's spelled. The pronunciation of Gaelic, Irish, and Celtic words, like Samhain, okay? It's pronounced Samhain. So you go, oh, is that S-W-E-N? The way they spell it is S-A-M-H-A-I-N. Looks like Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. So even though I know that Candlemas is pronounced Imbolc, or spelled Imbolc, I-M-B-O-L-C, who knows how it's pronounced. But anyway, so that's Candlemas, which is covered by the secular holiday. This is the other thing that got, that happened. I mean, it's kind of hard. It was kind of hard for them, the newer system, to cover up, the solstices and equinox, because they're major parts of, that's when the seasons start. There's almost so much of the natural you can configure into your own agenda before there were certain limitations. So those were kept. And then the other ones, okay, so what did they turn the new year into? They turned it into Halloween. Now, of course, the whole trick-or-treating has to do with that at the end of one year and the opening of a new year is when the veils of almost like the years overlap. And so spirits, and supposedly the veil thins, and that's my experience. And And so spirits can kind of come through, and the whole thing of wearing scary costumes was to confuse the spirits. I mean, again, it's a folk thing, but that's okay. So they covered this observance with Halloween. They covered Candlemas with Groundhog Day. Okay, so then we move forward, and then we'll have the spring equinox. Can't do anything with that. And then there's August 1st or 2nd. I think it was again Lugasnad, something like that. But that's the next 6 week. They don't have anything for that. It's also known as Lammas Day. They kind of just blew that one off. And then, of course, then we have the summer solstice. Am I getting it right? About? Or did I miss one? Let's see. Summer solstice. Right? May Day. Summer solstice. August 1st. Oh, spring. We get the spring equinox, and we're back to Halloween. So, I mean, that's the 8. And then, of course, other appropriations. Easter, we know, comes from Ishtar, a fertility goddess, and people go, "Oh, you sure you're not just playing with it?" Well, what are rabbits known for? Breeding like rabbits. Okay, fertility. What do eggs represent? Fertility. It's a fertility festival that one of the new religions decided to be the Resurrection Day. Okay, so anyway, and one of the reasons I'm making a big deal about it, because we're entering a new year, and many of us, because we grew up in religions, like I was baptized. I had to unbaptize myself because who they consecrated me to won't work. So there's this whole system that has taken place in the last few thousand years. There's a lot of prep before the full here we are. But that's, again, I'm not into history. And when I'm done with this little dissertation, I'll start doing some community news, why I've been relatively inactive, and what my plans are for the future. So there's a lot going on, and it's really interesting that there's a lot of confusion right now. Now, one of the groups that are not confused and feel relatively well placed in this crazy time are people who belong to the new traditions. And one of the reasons why is because their tradition is a tradition. They have, whether I consider it an overlay, artificial, whatever, it's a system. And it's a system that's laid on top of ours. I mean, it's really kind of easy to put tracing paper on something, draw it, and then put in your own stuff. And that's much what has happened. And so the many people who are rooted in a belief system, whether or not I have a whole lot of thrilled about that belief system or not, they have a grounding. And that will, at least that keeps them not feeling like they're just blown every which way. There are some people who are grounded in the old traditions, but most people are blowing in a new age breeze. And I mean, because I see it, a lot of people have, at least if you have let's say you have, a socket, and you have, the positive and negative, and let's say you have a ground. Most people have pulled the positive and negative out, but they haven't taken the ground out. And in many ways, I can understand, because you don't completely disconnect until you reconnect, or else you're just blowing in the breeze. And there's a lot of blowing in the breeze. And I mean, like a case like Mandela effect. A lot of people will mention the Mandela effect. A lot of people will mention the archons. But is there any connection into this stuff? Now there's somebody, a lot of people might know the name, John Lash, and he's been putting out stuff from a modern Gnostic perspective. And to me, what he has done is he's kind of leaped a lot over the hot mess of the Nag Hammadi scriptures, which have a lot of Gnosticism or yeah, I should say Gnosticism. I don't use a lot of Gnostic thought in them, but I hardly consider Nag Hammadi Gnostic texts. You can see in the Nag Hammadi text the influences of the new system. You see some of their angels mentioned. I mean, you can see because again, the old traditions were quite magical. And the new system came with a new magic. And the average person was still kind of like today. Even in the mystery schools, you had your professors and you had some people who were still in the lesser mysteries, learning certain things, haven't really been enlightened yet, and they're floating around, and they're floating around in this new milieu in the Middle East. This people, the Hebrews have adopted, have contracted with this being in the sky. Which was quite eye-opening to the earth-based traditions, who had at least 35, 40,000 years of honoring the Earth Mother. And with the whole cosmology, understanding the origin in the galactic center and the whole little kerfuffle or cosmic drama that produced the being Yaldabaoth and the archons. And the archons is a dense subject. But again, what I mean about this kind of like this New Age breeze is it's kind of like somebody making a sundae, but it has no, it's based purely on what their palate likes. So it's maybe you get 3 scoops, 3 different kinds of ice cream, and you get the colored sprinkles, and you get the chocolate sprinkles, and there's some silver sprinkles too, and let's have some nuts. Got anything else? Want to make sure I got it. Everything is in there, and so there's a lack of groundedness. Again, and I go into so many circles, and I hear, I'll hear Gaia, I'll hear Sophia, I'll hear archons, I'll hear. There's another word, but it's escaping me. But it's all ungrounded. It's just a bunch of. It was like a smorgasbord, and now they're sitting at a table with all, the food was given for free, and there's more than they can eat, more than they can digest. Some things make very bad food combining, and so there they sit, and I've been running into that in the general. I mean, I'm really getting out, listening to a lot of people. I want to give special props, not that I think they listen to me, but Lisa Harrison does a regular YouTube. She has a YouTube deconstructing the construct, and I've been following her for months. For the longest time. Let me put them together so I can speak and about both of them. And the other one would be Danny. I can't remember her last name. I know her as Danny Potty Mouth. Although she's gotten so much better. I have to tell you, I mean, I used to be, or it's just like, oh my God, we got 3 fucks in, or some form of the word in that sentence. Oh, you just got 4 and you topped yourself. All right. No, she hasn't been like that. And what's interesting, so these are people who I've been following because I can feel them. I felt their goodness, but the conversations were, getting all over the place. I now look forward, starting 3 weeks ago, each one of them, independently of each other, Lisa has deconstructing the construct. Danny has, I think it's her, that one is removing the shackles, and she has her group called the Unfuckers. And I belong to Tot and I belong to iRise, and Kathy of iRise had she's the administrator there. She always puts up Lisa and Danny's stuff. And I always click on, and I click through, and I'm looking for someone to engage me. And, it just doesn't work for me. It's their group having their conversation. Just like I'm in groups having our conversation, and it's all good, but, it's like it might not be your juice. So you say, I'll pass on this one. Starting about 3 weeks ago, I did my normal thing. I start at the very beginning. I want to hear how it begins. And right away, I'm like, hey, these guys are having a real conversation. They're having a campfire conversation. I had my first campfire a couple of weeks ago. 3 people showed up. That's okay. I didn't over-promote it, and I will be doing another campfire. And little by little, I'm quite sure we'll get people coming in. But the campfire is really where somebody starts it, and and it's beautiful. Lisa starts her conversations, Danny starts her conversations, and basically they're talking about I'll call it woo-woo of the week, but we're not talking about woo-woo here. We're talking about the intel that we all can bring to each other, certainly bring to ourselves, in the form of visions, synchronicities, ahas, those 30-second trance states, 30-minute trance states, dreams, and all shamanic journeys, any number of places where you leave the regular, our normal kind of, beta consciousness, and go into some kind of an alpha state that isn't TV induced. And so what we do is we get information. And then we can come back to the campfire, to the tribe, to the community, and say, hey, this happened to me, and it's a little out of the ordinary, and I'd like to share with it. Somebody goes, oh my God, you had that experience too. I had something just like that. And before and then, it can get a little more tangential, but it all pours into into something where suddenly a form takes shape. There's enough of the jigsaw puzzle pieces that a form takes shape, and the beauty of the sharing is that the story that emerges is for the people or the community, the tribe, the collective that is sharing that information. Now, it can have broader applicability, but everything starts local and then networks outward. So starting 3 weeks ago, I listened from start to finish and was almost sad when I finished. Now, and it's funny, the earlier ones were close to 2 hours, or at least an hour and a half, hour and 45, something like that. Second one's like an hour and 20. The one that came out this week was an hour. But the interesting thing is I'm seeing a convergence. I'm seeing the guidance of our Blessed Mother, and moving us towards each other, back to the old ways of sharing and having a common goal by arriving at it together. Because when you sit in a sacred space, there might be somebody like myself, a gray beard who's been in this for a long time, but we all sit there to share. We sit there to share, and we sit there to listen and hear each other. Because unless we listen with deep intent to hear and understand what's being said, what we share will not have it. It might even miss the point, but it certainly won't have what we would if we had gotten all of the intel by hearing what somebody is saying rather than just listening to the words. And Danny of Removing the Shackles, I put one out a few days ago. I just before I did the show, I finished listening to Lisa Harrison's last one. And it's just beautiful. And people are now realizing that we need to share our intel together. And the other thing is, once seemed like, almost like, okay, that's the Australian tribe, and I think Danny's in Malta. And now at this point now it's getting to the point where there's so much convergence where these various tribes could sit in one place and kind of almost have the same conversation. This is something that in these new agey alternative community couldn't have happened even 2 months ago, maybe not even a month ago. And a month ago we were kind of like on the cusp of it. So here we are in a new month from the Northern European, at least, perspective, a new year. And there's a lot of, the prevailing wind is beautiful. But there are going to be some gusts. And some of us, are on the journey. So we're just going to use some kind of like relative things. We're moving along at a pretty good clip right now. We have to. We're at like either the old ways will take hold and their sanity will take hold, or the new one will crest over it. But I kind of it looks to me like things are already settled, and the way they're settled, I'm good with. But the pieces still have, like, in other words, it's almost like the game's been played, but we haven't finished moving the pieces on the board. Like, in other words, there has to be that formal ritual. Excuse me for a second. So some of us have realized, oh man, this thing is moving along, better keep up. So let's say we're moving along at a rather brisk pace. I use not the non-metric system, so I'm going to have to use miles per hour. So 90 miles per hour. Okay? I feel like we're moving along at about 90 miles per hour. And there are going to be some gusts coming along that'll maybe be more like 100 miles an hour. So it'll be a little buffeting, but it'll almost be wind at your back. If you're not moving at all, or are moving at 10 miles an hour, when that 100-mile-an-hour gust comes along, you could be knocked on your face. And that won't be pleasant. Even while you're blotting the blood out of your nose, you realize the wisdom of what has just transpired. It will still sting. And but it's everything can change in the twinkling of an eye. Your orientation with what's going on, with the Tao, with Earth Mother, can change in the twinkling of an eye. But it's a decision that has to be made. And it has to be, it's going to have to be a deep heart, soul, spirit thing. What am I up to here? 22 minutes. Okay, I guess that kind of finishes that. So anyway, I'm just really happy. All the people who have kind of been doggedly at this are now, to me, they're seeing their fruit. But as an outside observer, I'm seeing fruit. What used to look like strange fruit now is familiar fruit. And this is all very indicative to me of what's going on. And I hear it in the language. And of course, I've managed to form some really good contacts. And I have to, Raksha Moose, who I have, done, I think, 6 shows with the Mystic and the Moose. We're on hiatus from that. Has been a gift. And it's been a gift that's worked both ways. And I won't get into it because it actually might be mushy. So, Mystic Brew. Mystic Brew has been a little tricky for me. And that is because I've so gotten used to having conversations. Like even if if Raksha and I are doing a show and I'm talking to Raksha, even though it's almost like the same thing as recording Mystic Brew, I'm in a conversation. So like right now here, I'm talking to a camera in my room, and I'm not in a conversation. And so and being in conversation always feels like the ball is moving forward. When the kind of thing of putting out a video, and and I love you all and thank you for watching and being here. There's a whole thing is like, how can I be of service? And the way I've been trying is letting people know that on Sunday nights and on Thursday nights, Raksha has live streams. And I think there's really, really good information that gets shared there. And one of the most important things he shares is about the inner work we need to do, so that we can find some grounding. And even if we haven't finished doing the inner work, if we do enough inner work where we can at least sit in an area with other grounded people, there's a certain amount of sharing, even at that level, that can be done. So Mystic Brews have been tricky because it's kind of like I'm going to sit down at a camera, and I know I'm talking to all of you, but, I am still sitting in a room alone. And it feels like it is the time for dialogue. And to me, dialogue isn't me talking to you through a video, no matter how much love I share with you. And then we have comments below. Because texting is 20% of communication. So even if we have the richest comments, it's only 20% of what you could have said to me face to face gets transmitted. 80% is a huge loss. That's a huge loss of signal. And we need to amp up the signal. And 20% communication rate to me is a poor metric. And I'm trying to ease out of it. I am playing with doing a live stream on Monday evenings, and I'm playing with the "Can't You Hear Me" Gnostic, which is a play on "Can't You Hear Me Knockin'" by the Rolling Stones. I won't be putting any music on because I don't need any copyright strikes, and it's about having a conversation with people who might find the topic of Gnostic thought interesting. You notice I'm staying away from the ism word because I think all isms are is when something wholesome starts to rot. Really, isms are rot within something dynamic and delicious and whole. An ism starts to tie it down. An ism starts to put preservatives into it. And anything that is alive and dynamic doesn't need to be preserved because it will continue to regenerate or grow, or both. So Can't You Hear Me Gnostic is an idea I'm having of just, having a live stream so that now it at least is a live chat and I can say something, have people respond, ask questions, whatever. Because again, even when it comes to the Gnostic topic, concepts like Gnosticism, which, and John Lash uses it. And I think if it's either he doesn't have the issue I have with isms, or that it's, again, he's busy doing so much that something as small as that I can see escaping his purview. But it's the Can't You Hear Me Gnostic is really a way for me to kind of open up a discussion about Gnostic thought, which to me is really the old traditions. But it was, the mystery schools of where, and also, again, the word Gnostic was a pejorative, or in other words, a slur, an insult from the people of who really were quite uninformed, and again, a lot of them were from the new revelations, and and they were speaking with great authority, and then here are these people who are coming from tens of thousands of years of tradition, and especially in the formalized mystery schools, it had gotten honed to a fine edge, that knowledge base. And they had been doing this for millennia. So when this new religion showed up, and at the time the newest of those new religions would have been Judaism, but that didn't get much alarm from them because the Hebrews kept to themselves. They didn't want to intermarry. So it's just like whatever they were doing, they're keeping it. It's a private. They contracted with them. It's their deal. Leave them alone. What you see in the Nag Hammadi scripting, and when the Gnostics really came out of the woodwork, is when they saw this thing starting to possibly catch into Rome and become this huge state religion based on this very bad contract, and they were bringing great understanding in the depth of their wisdom to these people, and so they got called they think they know everything. We're only coming from the memory from the most distant part of our beginning on this planet. Back when we were brutes. And so Gnostic, even the word Gnostic, is a tricky term. The Gnostics themselves called themselves telestai, or telestai, Telestai, and it means those who are aimed. And but I really want to open up a dialogue, because archons are a complete shit show when it comes. Everybody knows the word, almost nobody understands what it is. And the archons, and of course their overlords, and Yaldabaoth, the main overlord, was one of the biggest topics of discussion. Now, it used to be kept in the mystery schools, because it was basically, okay, when we go out and we're journeying, there's wholesome, and then there's a certain crowd that we all know came about when the earth was formed. We all have it it's all part of our narrative. We know who that crew is. And yeah, people would tap, there'd be individuals, all kinds of people experimenting, and there were people who were not right in the head, and they started, there was all kinds of stirring on that side, smacking of the hornet's nest. But the wise knew better and stayed away. And that's why they were, and they were aware of this thing sitting out there wanting to come through. And finally it got breached in a big way. I think we see precursors of this breaching and communication with these entities when you start having kind of some of these tribes that came out of the Caucasus, north of the Caucasus. But Maria Gimbutas writes about it. I think it's called A Chalice and the Blade, and it's the old matriarchal societies. And suddenly these warriors just start pouring out of the north, fully weaponized into villages that might have had a few knives around or something. But war is a waste of resources if you're a skilled people. If you have metal, you turn them into plows and scythes and other things that will help you feed yourself and be productive. If you make contact with some kind of angry parasitic entity, then you're going to meet the angels who are not going to teach you how to make hoes. They're going to teach you how to make spears. And then they're going to instruct you. You're kind of hungry, aren't you? Well, look at those people on their farms, and they have no spears. Go get them, boys. And that's what they did. And this is before the big stuff, before the revelations in deserts and things like that started happening. And so we can see already that this energy was being tapped into, and I think some of the beings who I think very possibly could be Earth beings, but the Anunnaki, they're obviously another group for sure. But I think that they were trying to make contact, and I think that's also why they were using monatomic gold. I think they were different enough, and I don't think they had the inborn capabilities that we humans. This is why we're so fucking special. Okay, we're really an amazing species. We've been duped for thousands of years. Okay, and not allowed to unfold in this beautiful planet that we have, and just find what it is we want to do without work weeks and rent and all the other stuff that came with that system. Again, that system marks kind of like the breaking of the dam. The dam had been leaking probably for 1,000 or 2 years before then, trickling into humanity with its toxic effluent. So how am I doing on time? 33 minutes, not bad. Okay, so can't you hear me, Gnostic? So the whole thing is to try and have this conversation. And there are certain people who are going to come from, let's say an opposing view, but I want to have the conversation. It's like, this is fine. Opposing views are fine. Bring your reasoning, and I'll bring my reasoning, and we'll see how it all works out. And also the fruits. What is the fruit of your God connection? And all right, community. So this live stream, Can't You Hear Me, Gnostic, is the working title for now. I might do it next Monday, and if I do, there'll be communications on his channel about it. A conversation that there aren't many people that can't really be held. I mean, if you're going to have a conversation about a mode of thought that was kind of like the worldwide mode for a long time. It's best somebody who kind of lives it and has put years into understanding, and also the years of meditation and journeying to reclaim, ancestral memories. You could say Akashic memories, travel. I'm trying not to, again, we all have our intel sources, and it isn't as important how we get it, is that we share it, and that we fit it together and start getting the synergy that comes from that kind of sharing. Also, with regard, so there are various things. I mean, I have ModWiz 125. I really went for just regular ModWiz. I had to add the 125 because somebody had taken ModWiz. So I'm really ModWiz, which is short for Modern Wizard, but ModWiz is to make it sound very unassuming, which is how I want to present myself. And where am I going? Okay, so we have ModWiz. There's, Rakshamoose, Jerry Cthulhu, Nox Mente is another one, or I guess that's the name of the show. That's Jerry Cthulhu and this woman Niche, who I'm quite sure I know some of the people who watch this know who Niche is, and Groovy Bean, and so there were some others, but this is more the discussion, the kind of moving forward conversations that focus more, if not exclusively, on us and what we're doing, rather than on what the cabal and the other assholes are doing. Tracking them, who cares? I mean, again, it's all over the place. You can't not know it. But, again, the whole, what hidden symbol is here and that and the other stuff. And, it's what are we going to do? So that's kind of I feel was the focus of this kind of networking and the developing kind of what I'm going to call, what I would call like the equivalent of a TV channel, where basically where you only one channel. Excuse me. And what's implied like by that is, as we schedule each other on days and hours and stuff, we are mindful not to step on each other. So, because there's only one channel in concept, obviously. So this is a concept we're playing with, trying to coordinate where what's going, and where there's a certain amount of the carrying on of at least parts of a greater conversation, so that the conversation itself is alive in some form at all times. And that conversation is us, where are we going, developing our own culture and traditions. There's a very important thing. It says all politics, again, another archontic shit show. Politics is down, but until there's a lot more people wake up, the shit show will continue. Politics is downstream from culture. And it is. So in other words, culture influences politics. So to me so if you look out and you see a sea of sickness, and you look at the dominant culture and you get sick, well, then maybe it's just time to start another culture. I mean, I'm part of the I grew up in the hippie movement. I know what a counterculture is. I know the impact it can have. Even with the CIA messing with you, with, again, opening doors of consciousness through the drugs, but with nobody to guide us in that. I mean, Timothy Leary is a guide. Oh, please. Ken Owsley, I think he was one of the makers of LSD. I mean, these weren't guides, man. They were guides to the drug, and that's where the guidance ended. So I know what it's like to be part of a counterculture movement that failed. But man, if we don't come up with a tradition of sorts. And for me, the easiest thing is to borrow from ourselves. Again, we have to leapfrog over the last, I don't know, anywhere, at least minimally 3,000 years, where you can land into some good old-fashioned earth-loving pagan territory and get back to earth, creating a world that is based on earth and not this world that came out of the sky. Because most of us, a lot of people, get me off this planet. Let me tell you something. The planet is not where you have a problem with. You have a problem with the world. This planet is not a problem. This planet is beautiful. This planet is alive. It's intelligent. It's loving. It is our mother. So, but the world, oh man, this world needs to be demolished. The world that we currently live in is sick. It is the product of thousands of years of the poison that is poured out from this consciousness that dominates the consciousness of a couple of billion people on this planet. And but we're getting there. But it's just it just gets discouraging sometimes. And so basically, what we're trying to do in the network is networking is trying to create a coherent conversation and start finding out through our dreams that common landscape that we came from. And then this big, giant fecal deposit was put onto the planet. And we're dealing with that. So we have, but again, it's can be done in the twinkling of an eye. So yeah, that's the plans are. The plans are to really start to create a dynamic network of communications from people who've sat down together and communicated and coordinated, so that if you're spending your time watching YouTubes at evening and your thing is to try and be productive during your recreation, that we might offer a venue for that. So we're working on that, and that's got me fairly excited because I'm loving this. I'm loving dealing with people in real time. We're all lost in this technology. More and more of us are finding ways to balance and start to use, and that's what we're doing with this community. The thing is, okay, it's time to come out from behind the usernames and the anonymity, and nobody knows what you look like. And if they sat next to you on the bus, they wouldn't know it. Meanwhile, they told you they loved you in a chat, you wouldn't know if you sat on them next to a bus. That's ridiculous. This is, again, I understand that on the internet, why anonymity is good when you don't know anybody, but when you're starting to form a community, anonymity's bullshit. All right, I mean, if you're part of a community, you are not anonymous. You're not Batman or whatever the heck, avatar you fly. In a sacred circle, you come wearing a loincloth. You come and sit in love, sit in wisdom, which are largely one and the same thing. So, I think that's kind of where I'm going to close it out. I can tell my throat, my voice is getting tired, but I definitely wanted to get this out. I think we can have a lot of fun together. We really can. We can have a lot of participatory, growing fun and fun of meaning. So, and of course, fun means fun, but it's kind of fun at the work site in a certain way. So, okay, that'll be the end of this. I think I covered everything I wanted to, but I'll find out. I have people, lots of people, the people who watch my videos, and there are certain people who get back to me about everything. So I would like to say good night right now, and catch you on the next transmission. Stay sane, Stay centered, stay loving, and I'll see you next time.